Hello, welcome to today's webinar entitled Tracking Technology and Industry Trends in Construction. My name is Jordan Marshall and I am Special Projects Editor at Building Magazine. I'm delighted to be hosting today's session because we've got such a great panel pulled together for you. So first up, we've got Tom Nokta, who's Manager International Strategic Product Consultants at Procore. We've got Tapan Desai, who's IT Architect for Construction at Vestas, and Jonathan Monkley, Digital Services Lead for Property and Buildings at WSP. So we've got a really great session ahead for you today. As always, all our sessions are available for 12 months on demand. So if you watch today, just can't get enough of it, want to recap, share with your colleagues, please feel free. Give us half an hour to get the video turned around and it'll be available for you via the same link you've joined today. Also, we really want the audience to get involved. So please do send through your questions at any time. I'll be facilitating a Q&A, and so we'd love to get as many of your questions answered as we possibly can. That's probably enough from me in the setup. So I'm going to hand over to Tom, who's going to reveal some findings of some research and then get some feedback from both Jonathan and Tapan about the state of the industry and how that all feeds together. So Tom, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce you to the benchmark report that Procore had commissioned. So next slide, Jordan, please, or Celine, sorry. Brilliant. So a little bit about the report that was published by Procore. We've called it or titled it How We Build Now. And the purpose of this survey was to get a sense from the industry itself across the UK and Ireland in terms of the technology adoption rates across construction companies and understand the challenges and opportunities that these companies face as they seek to drive productivity, profit, and performance. Next slide. So what I'm going to do is dive into some of the key findings of the report itself, and alongside Jonathan and Tapan, we will have some Q&A around some of the key findings. The first slide I'm going to focus on is just in relation to the adoption of digital technology or digital strategies across construction companies in the UK and Ireland. And some interesting insights came back in relation to that fact. 12% of construction firms describe themselves as a digital-first business, meaning that technology is at the forefront of their operations, while 44% of construction firms describe themselves as well on the way in terms of transforming their business themselves. So with these interesting facts, Jonathan, construction is historically a very least digitized, so we say it was the second least digitized industry across the market. Perhaps we're starting to see a shift here. I'd love to get your perspective on that.
So it's always, we think we get beat. I think we just get beat by farming, don't we, as an industry from digital adoption?
Yes, indeed.
I think there's been a significant shift over particularly the last 10 years. There's been a big drive. I mean, you can go back to AutoCAD and digitizing the drawing board, but I still think there is a long way to go, though, from a digital adoption perspective. We've one of the discussions I was actually having yesterday was we've done things like we spent 10 years digitizing the production of the PDF on site so people can print it out and still mark it up with highlighters. But I think the top end of the industry is now very digitized, which is probably that 12% that you see. I think I would probably kind of agree with that. And there's probably several factors have driven that. I think the original BIM mandate had a real big impact on adoption of basic technologies across design practices, which is then fed into the construction sector in a lot of ways. The pandemic, interestingly, I think was a big catalyst and an instant change for a lot of firms. People were pushing back on the use of hybrid working and digitization and in general, and everyone suddenly had to do it. And one of the changes for me personally during that time was I was working on projects in Germany and the US, sat in Manchester in its entirety. So that all the supply chain on those projects adopted things like drone scanning, so you could visit site via the drone scans. But the industry has become more competitive, margins are tighter, it's harder to be profitable, and I think there's a big adoption trend in that space to improve the way companies operate, to give yourself a competitive edge on projects to win. Therefore, it's an absolute must now for companies in the space to be pushing forward, particularly depending on your client mix. If you're not using future tech and emerging technologies, you just won't win projects anymore. So there's that absolute need to do that. But efficiency and profit, obviously, the key drivers.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And you mentioned there kind of a forced kind of digitization spur in relation to with COVID, and I tend to agree with that also. But what are the specific problems that you feel that companies are trying to solve as well, outside of getting value out of profitability, costs, etc.? Is there additional problems that they're looking to solve?
I think in some ways there's too much technology now for a lot of businesses. You look across the portfolio of most businesses, they have the technology to do whatever they want. There's the people and the culture issue that they need to do, and the change issue. We probably went through about 5 or 6 years of just buying tech and throwing it at companies and throwing it at projects, expecting it to fix things. And then we're like, oh, it hasn't. Why is that? And it was always down to the people and the problem you were trying to solve. And I think I professionally got to a point now where I tackle things differently. And I think the industry is starting to do that now. It looks at a problem and then builds a solution back from that. But you're looking like WSP, for example. One of the challenges we've tried to tackle is it can't be technology first. It needs to be engineering first and design first. So it's quite often it's got to a point when projects are so digitized, the technology drives the way we work. And one of the things we've started to do is implement mission rooms in our offices to get people sat around a table again, collaborating, rather than sat on virtual design team meetings, because it gets people back in front of each other, putting the engineering first rather than the technology first, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And Tapan, I'm really looking forward to getting your perspective as well from Vestas, from the Vestas side, and we'll dive into that further at the end of the session to get the whole holistic view. So I think this is a good segue onto our next slide here. You've also mentioned, Jonathan, some of the key challenges around adopting technology, and what we see as well here is there's a lot of point solutions being pushed in terms of looking at a specific problem in a specific department, and then another that leads to another problem. And as you said, collaboration is key to the success to successful project delivery, to successful implementation of technology. So some interesting sites here also is that 44% of construction firms are planning to introduce construction management platforms in the next 12 months. The key word there is platform. And again, we'll get your perspective in a moment. But also, economic and industry volatility has led to 3/4 of UK and Irish decision makers increase investment into digital transformation. And over the past 3 to 6 months, and just over 1/4 of those have done so significantly. So there's definitely a push to become digitized. So Jonathan, with that as well, can you talk a little bit more about the importance of the platform, the connectivity between solutions, to help enhance collaboration, communication?
It's still a challenge for every single project we work on, the connection between systems and file types and projects and workflows. What the path people tend to go down is they pick a certain file type and they drive that through their company. Shan't go into names, but that tends to be the way that people go. They say, right, this is our workflow. We're going to use this file type, this system, and then everything spins across that. That's quite restrictive it works if the supply chain all do the same thing, but it's not particularly useful when someone steps in using a different system because they've been appointed as part of the design team. I think it's always going to be the same though. Or for the near future, we're not going to see open standards adopted across projects en masse, because it's just still quite painful. And when it comes to technology, people always go down the path of least resistance, and if that is just adopting a single type of solution, they'll tend to do that. But the platform approach to projects is definitely the way forward in this space. So if you can wrap technology around a team, they'll use it. If the systems don't talk to each other, they just won't be used, I think.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it here also, as not to mention Procore, but it is a construction management platform, and a lot of the challenges that we see is, you know, people starting to look outside of a specific problem, looking more holistically across their approach to delivery, to allow them then to get, and we'll talk a little bit more about data because I think it's highly important also. But you know, being able to capture that data and understand your business and your operations is critical too. So another question, which is probably one of my favorite one to people that are already on this journey, if you were to restart again, you had, you know, a blank canvas in terms of rolling out or starting a digital strategy across your business. What are the key things that you would recommend or look out for when starting on the journey?
Starting again from scratch.
Yes.
I would identify the strategic goals of the business, or what you from a business perspective. So what markets, clients, how does it want to operate? What problems is it currently facing on projects? What problems is it basically mapping out how it currently operates and how it wants to operate, and then building a tech stack back from that. There's been lots of this is talking about macroeconomics. I think there's been over the years, most businesses have made incremental shifts. Like we've adopted this bit, that bit, we've bought that bit on, and I think a lot of companies now are going through. They're kind of peeling away the onion that they've created from a digital perspective. So they want, instead of having 10 systems, they want 2 systems to make things simpler. But I think the mistake a lot of the industry has made is it's thrown technology at problems in construction, expecting it to solve them without thoroughly understanding the problems that it's trying to solve. And the battles the same battles still get cropped up. It's procurement doesn't quite work properly for the way we want to deliver projects. We're still on a race to the bottom from contractors. It's still about the cheapest solution. So there's still the traditional problems, but now they're digitized. So that I think that it would be really good to go back to something like 2010, if we could do that. Obviously, no one's got a time machine, but to look at the problems we were trying to solve again, and really understanding those problems, and analysing them, really digging them apart, and then starting to build new ways of working. Because we still battle the same things. It's still RIBA stage 1 to 3 is everyone works in that, and then everyone gets kicked over to a contractor. Some stay on, some don't. People want to just make a model that gets them up to that stage and then forget about it. And some of the most advanced digital projects, or some of the most successful projects I've worked on, have been where the entire design team has been together for a decade, and they've worked from blank sheet of paper to handover, and then repeated that 5 or 6 times. What that tends to do is it creates honesty and openness when delivering projects, and people will be willing to share their issues without the kind of distrust that our industry can still be quite hostile in the way it approaches stuff. And I think there's just a lot of traditional problems. I'm probably ranting a bit now, but there's a lot of the basic problems we haven't still solved in our industry, and we've just tried to digitize them all. Yeah, I think I need to take a deep breath there. I was getting a bit.
Take a moment for sure. No, but again, it's shining light on the challenges we still face, irrespective of, you know, implementing technology. You know, sometimes we may digitize for the sake of digitization, to keep up with our competitors, etc. in the business. But defining out the goals, having measurable targets on the success criteria of implementing something, I think is critical. And Tapan, hopefully, if you don't mind, I loop you in here also. You know, this is a journey that you're on yourself at the moment.
Yes.
You know, I'd like to position the same question to you, if you don't mind, in relation, if you were starting again, what would be the key areas of focus for you looking at implementing a construction management platform?
Yes, in fact, I would say that for starts, I would keep things simple. because for and easy for adoption, because what is happening is whenever we are digitizing in the space, uh, everyone is trying to make a lot of things and make a lot of processes around it and put a lot of checks and validations that that has an offer, because now we are digitizing things, but actually they don't feel the usability or the adopt or the end users pain in that scenario. And I think UI and um, the the information that we are pulling in and expecting from the end users is too much. So I think I would, if I had to start from scratch, I would start little easy for the end users to capture the data, start getting them interested on what they are getting out of the system, and then go on a faster pace to develop or make the process more stringent to collect more data towards it. So because then I'm sure the adoption is faster, people are more interested, and that's how we have started our journey as well. So
Yeah, to summarize, simplification is key, and again, couldn't agree more. This is, again, we're talking about construction, historically the second least digitized industry globally. Um, it needs to be easy to use. The way that the teams interact with the user interface needs to be intuitive, and most importantly, make benefit, I think, to their day to day. I think we could dive into change management, and if we wish, but making sure that whatever's being implemented, also will reap benefits in terms of business operations and insight. But the people that are using it on a day-to-day basis, it needs to be intuitive and impact how they're currently operating. So that's absolutely a great piece of advice to anyone looking to go on this journey. Yeah. Any other thoughts, sir?
I think there's still a skills gap we need to, particularly on the core face of construction, on the sites, in the trades. There's still a skills gap and a generational skills gap that needs to be addressed. And maybe in 20 years it'll be fine when the digital natives take over the world. But I've been involved with a company called Natural Building Systems, and hearing how the challenges they have with digital skills gap, because they've basically got graduates that are completely fine with using BIM authoring tools, apps, augmented reality, virtual reality, and then they're working with carpenters and tradesmen that can barely open an app on their phone because they've just never done it and never had to do it. So there still is that like chasm of skills gap that we face that has to be addressed. The thing is, the people building our projects and building the majority of them are these skilled trades individuals that are not digital natives and that are not comfortable with tools. So that meant what you mentioned earlier, Tapan, of simple UI and simple to use is so much more important than probably the technology. If the solution can probably be half as good if the UI works better for people. They're more likely to use it. The solution could be amazing, but if they open it and they don't have a clue how to use it, they're never going to use it. So that kind of digital skills gap and generational digital skills gap is something we need to try and tackle somehow.
Absolutely, and I have a point I often bring up on conversations around this piece is when implementing technology. In a prior life, we rolled out a construction management platform, heavily invested in the change management piece and implementation of that software. At the same time, we were also rolling out a new expenses system for the team. And it was night and day in terms of what was actually required to implement and train the teams. So from the construction side, we spent over 500 hours training the team, making sure they could use it. Whereas the expenses solution was rolled out overnight, zero training, and 100% adoption. And there's many reasons for that, right? But at the end of it, it's impacting if it impacts the people on the ground, both financially or in terms of productivity or just overall happiness in the role. I think they're more inclined take on and want to learn and incorporate that technology into day to day?
It's a people challenge. It always has been with technology. It is all about people. Take gaming engines as an example. There's a huge amount. Gaming engines requires years of experience to learn. People want to use them and implement on projects because they drive really cool outcomes. But there's a bunch of solutions now that are super low entry skill requirement to use. You can be trained in them in a couple of hours and just about get that similar results. So our industry will adopt them, and individuals will adopt them because they can be sat down for a couple of hours and then they're using it. Whereas learning something like an ultra high-end gaming engine, years of training. So if anything that's like the lower you can put the bar from an entry perspective, the more likely it is to be adopted, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Excellent. So let's move on to the next section. So next slide, please. And this is my favorite topic, which is in relation to data. I think it's maybe something that's overlooked in the terms of adopting and implementing technology is the lack of understanding of what you can actually do when you're capturing this standardized digital data. So some of the examples that we have found out in the report is, companies have found, capturing data will drive productivity and profitability. It allows the standardization of data, meaning you can standardize your operational procedures, forms, etc., across your business. Proactively facilitate better decision making, because we start to talk then about reporting and analytics and insights into the business operations, and reduce and eliminate, to a point, laborious processes. And the more streamlined and automation that we can include, the better. And again, I think something that's always at the top of all businesses, irrespective of the industry, is in relation to cost. And what we found is business leaders predict a 25% project's cost saving if data is more effectively captured and integrated. So I'd love to get a sense of, Jonathan, from you first, if you don't mind, just kind of your experience with harnessing data from digitizing, and go from there. So yeah, I'd love to hear that.
If this isn't my statistic, I've stolen the statistic from somebody who works in data, actually, and it's something like 98% or 96% of data generated from construction projects is never looked at, or something ridiculous like that, or give or take a couple of percent. And it's really interesting to think what we could do with what was generated on projects and actually using it to add value. But I think we haven't harnessed the opportunities yet at scale. I think there are projects that are starting to get benefits from it, but it depends on what you're trying to achieve. I think the building safety bill is going to have an impact on how data is driven on projects, with things like the golden thread and the concepts around that. Sustainability and carbon is on everyone's lips, and the only way we're going to tackle construction's carbon addiction is through data and data management on projects, looking at embodied carbon and operational carbon and EPDs within the asset, and understanding how we can leverage that data to make better decisions to reduce the impact the built environment is having on the planet, because it is massive. But I don't think our industry has got to a point yet where they are data natives. The skill sets are lacking across a lot of companies and a lot of projects, or it's a very rare skill set to have someone who is a data scientist or a data specialist, because it's just a rare skill set in our industry. We're engineers, we're designers, we're project managers. But I think the opportunities kind of float around things like operational efficiency. I remember a project I was involved in years ago, just measuring the amount of hours people were traveling, because it was never measured on timesheets across a large company I worked with. And when they actually got people to put travel time down on a timesheet, they realized they had a massive issue. there was something like 14 years worth of man hours was lost in a year from people just traveling across this big, large, multidisciplinary project. And as soon as they saw that, they thought, right, we need to be clever with this. We need to use Teams more. So instantly it was like, oh, we've measured something, we've got some insight, and we're going to change it. And I think that the simple fact is you can't make decisions at scale or on projects and on portfolios of projects without data. And it's where things like the National Digital Twin concepts came from. That's now the cyber physical infrastructure concept. Without data, we can't make decisions, or you're just guessing, or you're throwing a dartboard. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I suppose with the implementation of the likes of a construction management platform, the value there is also that the insights become proactive rather than reactive. Is looking at historic reports and trying to make those decisions. The data can simply tell you where the areas are to improve, and that's more at the top end of analytic analysis, which is understandable. But I think what we've talked about so far is more in relation to the tier one markets, right? Where I have seen, the likes of these companies hire data analysts and so forth to help performance of their business. But for the general contractors, in lower tiers, like tier two markets, for example, the value, as you said, is just again capturing that data, understanding performance. Likes of capturing timesheets or supply chain as well. The interaction between your supply chain, how many accidents are happening, how many construction issues are being captured on a daily basis, who has the potential to impact your cost of your of your project and your schedule. These are basic things that I see a construction management platform being able to harness very easily. So definitely some great points there. And Tapan, again, you're on this journey, and we'll dive into it a little bit more detail. Does that resonate with what you're seeing also?
Yeah, definitely. I think with my experience, even in the industry, what we have felt, or what I have felt, is that today people are trying to digitize and do the reporting, but they are limiting themselves to, say, cost versus actuals, and very limiting themselves to uh, what any system can give immediately, but the deep diving or the root cause analysis is being done then manually, right? And that is exactly where they are not using the data that they have already captured. So I think that's the maturity journey that even we are going towards. And I think our industry needs to where when we need to rely less on why and what to question, but rather than let the system answer where exactly, as you said, which process is hindering or what is causing the delay or the cost that is coming on. So I think that journey we need to take it on going forward.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And just to touch back on one more point that you mentioned, Jonathan, is I think what we're starting to see now, especially with the BIM mandate, you mentioned that earlier on, the likes of the building regulations and Part L now coming to fruition. We're starting to see, regulations come in with the requirements to capture digital information. So there is that risk of you need to digitize, or your inability to capture or log the required information is going to be missed. So that's a really interesting point. So yeah, and one other point as well I'd love to hear your perspective on as well, in terms of the data capture, is traditionally as well, again, probably more in the tier 2, tier 1 construction companies, is it has the potential to replace roles to a point, right, in terms of data capture. Historically, if we take quality and safety departments, for example, they potentially could hire an administrator that's sole responsibility is to capture all of the manual inputs from site, to generate safety reports across their business. Is that something you're starting to see less of, or do you still think that those roles still exist, coinciding with the harnessing of data?
There's a really chat GPTs on everyone's lips at the minute. It's as simple as that. Everyone's talking about AI and jobs getting replaced. There was a really good advert from a contractor that was on the side of a building that said, it was massive letters saying, ChatGPT, can you finish this building, please? But then it was basically advertising that the skilled hands of the contractors will finish the building, and a computer couldn't do it, which I think is a really interesting point. Our industry will always be a people-based industry. There'll always be people doing stuff. The roles may change and what you do on a job may change. I think there's always a place for technology to improve the way we do stuff and to make teams more efficient. But I've always believed that when you're intimidated by a technology and you think it's going to replace you, you should learn about it and you should understand it and you should try and use it and become good at it. I think when people ignore technology, it's usually it definitely exposes them to a professional risk if they think it's going to take their role, which is always an odd one. I always think it's odd that. But I think we'll always be a people industry, no matter what. People's roles may change. It may take 2 people instead of 5 people, but they will end up doing something different on the project as well. Our industry needs people to deliver it. It's always hard to have like that true vision of what our industry will become in the next 20 to 30 years with the stuff happens with the way technology can just suddenly transform something. You look back to the 80s and you look back to what we thought the future was going to be like based on predictions, hoverboards and flying cars and anything like that. And even the way computers looked in all sci-fi films, you would never imagined things like Apple Vision Pro that's been released, or the way how ultra high fidelity virtual reality 10 years ago. It's impossible to, I do think it's very, very hard to predict what impact technology will have and where we will go with technology in 10 to 15 years, given how fast it moves. So to envision what the future of the construction site will look like is very difficult. I think there's going to be increased use of robotics, increased use of modular and off-site, which again changes the roles and changes the trades. But it will always need people to deliver it. It's simple as that. Architects might use AI more to design buildings. Machine learning might help people optimize structural frames, but it will still need people to help bring it together.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and we've specialized, skilled tradespeople out there working many years. It's hard to train a data model to replicate some of these things that are out there. So I wouldn't be worrying for any of our watchers or listeners. People are here to stay. Data and technology is here to support and enhance your day-to-day interactions in terms of operating a construction project and business. Excellent. So that was absolutely brilliant there. Can we move on to the next slide, please? This is the final slide. And in terms of the report as well, out of the 200 respondees, we found that it's quite a substantial number, but doesn't surprise me, that 25% of project time is spent on rework on projects. What we also found was, when collaboration, communication, access to the latest information is introduced, that rectification rates fall dramatically. So again, what's the perspective on this, Jonathan? Do you think this is something that is still a massive issue within construction? And if so, how can data and digital technology support?
It is one of the most, it is something that I find insanely frustrating that we still have rework on construction sites, because it's like we just allow it to be designed into the process ultimately, and then it's allowed for it's basically we design the errors from day one. In reality, the technology is there to allow us to ultimately eliminate rework if you chose to. I think there's some interesting angles on profitability for tier ones. There's always an interesting discussion. But things like engineering grade augmented reality can allow you to spot errors on sites by overlaying models and checking what's installed is correct, or making sure what you are going to install is correct based on the design. And I think that globally, it's something like, I think the figure's something like $600 billion a year is wasted on rework. Now, when you look at our industry's future ESG requirements, and the fact that every single firm has requirements to drive carbon out of projects and challenge the way projects are delivered, that has to be the lowest hanging fruit you could possibly imagine, just to not mess up. It has to be that it's simple. You can get into ultra high end materials, graphene, embedded concrete, and all green arc electric produced steel, or just don't make mistakes. And it's like, well, which is the easier one to do? Just don't make mistakes. But we still have processes of building those errors in to site through the way we procure, through the way teams are still not quite disparate, but we do have the tools to remove rework, or ultimately to remove errors from site before they get there. And it's just a matter of, but again, it's a people problem generally, or technology blended with people, the ability to visualize construction sequences to the nut and bolt level, if you require, to say, can you actually physically install this the way we predict, and getting the right people in the room to review it and saying, well, yes, we can do it that way. No, we can't do it that way. You could build a tech stack on a project and make a project perfect near enough if you chose to, but again, we still don't do that. There's still issues with planning, issues with costs. People aren't willing to put the cash up front due to risk on projects. Therefore, they want to deliver it in the cheapest, most efficient way possible. So sometimes those really cool end bits don't get implemented, or the teams don't have access to them.
Yeah. BIM's a prime example. You know, it's often seen as this mythical creature that lives in the office, in the office cabin that the design team manage and maintain. And the advantage of simply handing that over to the site team to build off and interact with could significantly help decrease rework because they're the latest information. And you've talked about some of the, the more fancy side of things with AOR, etc. What about the more simpler side of things in terms of how we could increase rework? The likes of simply having access to the latest drawings. We've all been there. I've worked in construction, right? And you may or may not know if you're working off the latest revision. You may not know what a revision is if you're a construction worker. So I think that's a really important side, and as with increased collaboration. So is that something also that resonates with you both?
100%. I think basic implementation of workflows that allows, even giving the guys an iPad with the latest drawings on, makes a huge difference. And BIM's trying to challenge that. It's not something I dig into too much on the very pointy end of construction. Given my role, I tend to be the guy in the house with the model, or my team tends to do that. But we are there making sure that the right data is issued and the right models are issued, the right drawings are issued. But we still don't check whether the guys on site have the right stuff. That's something we don't check. Maybe that's something for us to consider, actually. And ultimately, that probably is the case. They probably have it printed out in their back pocket as they're going around site, and they might not check they have the latest one if they just pull out the drawing. So that's a really interesting point, actually.
Yeah. And Tapan, again, this is something. Obviously, you're a customer Procore as well. We have that functionality there. Is that something you're seeing a benefit in terms of increasing or should I say decreasing the rework on projects?
Yes, definitely. I would say what we've done to reduce the rework is standardize the processes, as in to make it more. We are trying. We need to accept that it will never go zero, this 25%, but we can definitely reduce this. And how we are trying investors is to standardize each and every step in the flow and putting a checklist to each and every step to it, which basically is increasing a little more time, but we are sure of that we are delivering the right product, right quality to our customers. So that's what we've adopted in driving this rework, as in lessening the rework and bringing this number subsequently down. So in our processes as well.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you very much for that, Jonathan. Have you something else? I think I sensed you were going to speak there.
Actually, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, look, Jonathan, thank you very much for your input there. We're going to move on to our next slide now, and but please stick around. We're going to have some questions from the audience as well. But Tapan, I'd love to just hand it over to you, just to get a sense of kind of someone that has been on this full digitization journey recently within a large construction company. You know, the benefits and what you're seeing in terms of the three topics on the screen. So if you don't mind, I'll hand it over to you. And
Yes,
yeah,
sure. Thanks, Tom. So I will just, before I deep dive into our use case, I would like to introduce my firm first, which is Vestas. So to introduce to you, Vestas basically works and is pioneer in wind energy. We we deliver everything in wind and wind energy. We have been working in the sector from 125 years, and we have our presence across 40 countries, which are divided into five zones or five regions that we call. Now, when we adopted Procore, I think, or and we had this journey of digitizing as well in especially the construction field, because I represent construction investors. We What we finalized, or what we got from, and what were our goals, were these three, which is to get standardized and efficiency in our processes, to basically have an real-time actionable insights from our sites, and so that we can benefit from them, and then collect data from all the points, so we can do our decision making even in the back office, where most of the team, or the team that, which is a think tank, uh, would would work upon. And so taking first point, what how we benefited investors doing or digitizing, is basically we when we went for a mandate of digitizing our sector or our department, our only mandate was that, do not create or develop any softwares that for Vestas specific. Let's adopt something which is very industrial standard, which is industrial ready, and which can give us benefits, which is basically a plug and play kind of a software. So that was our challenge when we, and being an IT person, we were not really in that mindset to agree with our construction head. But we went with implementing Procore, and with uh, we could reap a lot of benefits from the way how Procore structures itself. It has all industrial ready, construction industrial ready tools available already. It has a lot of flows and guidance available, and we could, because of those materials, because of those information, we could out our roll the software out to the sites very quickly. For our journey started in January 2022, so it's almost 1.5 years now, 18 months, and we basically started with 200 odd users on day one, but now we have increased users to around 3,300 users on the platform. And this, as I said, this was based on our decision of keeping it simple, keeping it intuitive and easy, and basically because when you have a lot of training videos available for your internals and the externals, as in contractors, I think it makes the adoption very really fast. So that was how we tried to standardize and did an efficient way of use the standardization and efficiency of Procore, and collaborate where there to investors to implement it. When we talk about real-time actions and insights, we investors always used to think that, okay, we are digitizing, but aren't we digitized already? Because we do not use pen and paper. But investors, we were not actually using pen and paper, but Adobe Forms and Excel. And basically, that information is not usable because they have different formats, they are different forms, they are not stored at one place. And basically, we are storing the data in those information itself. So that data was not coming back to or in a central storage store, or we were not able to use that data, we were not able to get insights out. And that was the point that we said, no, we are not a digitized company. We have to have a, a software that is not an Excel or an Adobe, but which adopts a lot of information, which can store a lot of information. And that was what we started with. We now have implemented around we've implemented all our processes of the safety and the quality in the system now. Where we have around 600 different templates for our different products. uh, when we talk about Vestas, for us the products or our delivery is the wind turbine farms, and there we have a lot of wind turbines that we go manufacture, transport and install, right? So in construction we are majorly responsible for transport and installation, and that is where I think we benefited the most. Today we are using around, we have around 3000 in 30,000 inspections created till now in 1.5 years, which are stored in Procore, and we are able to analyze a lot of data from it, uh, in the system. We also in this journey had made one motto, which is more power to the users, in the hand of users. And that is where we tried to not actually not handheld them, but give the power to them themselves. So the structure that we've adopted in Vestas uh, for implementing is that we have created the databases for analytics as well. So the analytics, the reports, we have not created the reports, but we have created the databases where the reports can be built on by the project team themselves. So we provide templates, we provide them data, and then the project team develops their own reports, so they get the informations what they want, what they are concentrating on, and exactly what to look into for their particular project. We also have the support structure built in such a way that we in IT are only responsible for permissions and user metrics, but the day-to-day support and the day-to-day uh, um, questions that, or the trainings that are required by the new people, or a refresher training to an older person was already working in Procore, is given by the business themselves. So they know the nuances, they know the problems that are on the site, and they can direct them in that particular fashion with their day-to-day jargons, and they can easily place a connect with them, so they can come back to them to ask questions later on when they face it on the site. So that's how we made this actionable and insightful, for the whole, as in we made the whole structure in a way that they there is a lot of power in their hands, and they can use the software in the prescribed manner, which is most suitable for their projects. And lastly, on data driven decision making, I think this is the most interesting thing that we got out once we had implemented Procore in our system, because it was we could see a lot of informations that came out from the projects. We had informations which were product specific. So we had, because we are selling different configurations to our our customers, we had very similar problems coming from various different regions, right? So for a same product, so we could improve our products, but also our processes, because we had, right from we started tracking, as I said, we started tracking each and every process through inspections from transport to installation. and each and every step we are capturing it in the data, and we could know exactly where the process is failing or where the time is being taken a lot. And very interesting KPIs that we've built is some of we get from the system is like failures or failed items of inspections for a particular product of VTG, and also failed items of inspections for a particular process like transport, storage, or installation. We are also tracking observations, which are what type of non-conformities or quality observations or lessons learned or commissioning observations that we have seen on sites, including safety and environment, and how much time it takes for solving such problem, and why it is taking so much time. So we are actually we are able to go one step ahead of solving those kind of issues which are process driven and product driven. So I would say, all in all, with implementation of a digitized product which is intuitive, easy with UI, and capturing this data, trying to analyze it, we've saved a lot of time of our business team. Now they are able to analyze the data more rather than waste their time making the data or making the reports which can be represented to the customer or to the management. And I think it it does not basically does not just solve or make our management happy, but definitely also the the customers, them to whom we are delivering to, right? So that was it. So I think I uh, that was my experience with Vestas.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Tapan. Really good insight. Thank you for the continuous partnership as well with Procore. It's great to see the benefit that you're getting out of utilizing the platform. I just want to finish on one note there before we hand it over to Q&A. Is, you talked there about, where we not a digitized company already, we use digital PDFs, etc. The challenge is, again, standardization, the inability to report and analyze the data and understand operations. And that's where something like Procore comes in very useful, is that standardization, allow everyone collaborate and communicate in a single location, and again, harness that data. So really great insights. Thank you very much. Excellent. So yes, thank you very much to everyone, and Jonathan as well. Celine, I'd love to hand it, or Jordan, I'd love to hand it back to you. And if there's any questions from the audience, we'd be more than happy to answer.
No worries. We're also just going to leave that QR code up there so all of you can get access to the report that Tom's been talking about today. So please feel free to scan that QR code at any time. Got a few questions for you. Obviously not a heap of time left, but I've been endlessly taking notes while you guys have been speaking, because a bunch of things that I want to follow up on. So let's jump in. So you all spoke a lot about data and, the drive to capture it, but then more significantly, how can it be best used in practice, given that isn't something that is necessarily being done particularly well. I was sort of wondering, there's often a lot of talk about how there's a lack of collaboration in construction and fragmentation between businesses and a lack of willingness to data share. Do you see that culture shifting? And if not, what sort of levers do you think could be implemented to do it? And if so, do you think it is happening fast enough? Jonathan, I might go to you in the first instance, if you don't mind.
Thanks.
I can see you reacting as I'm speaking. So
I think it'll be a consistent challenge for us to share data. It's always hard, but I do think the way we're structuring projects now, you kind of have to, and the legislation is going to force us to in a lot of ways. The Building Safety Bill, Part L, past 2080. The simple fact is we have to become better at sharing data across projects. We might not necessarily do it across businesses, but it will definitely be, there's definitely a huge uptake of data sharing across the delivery of projects now, and I think that's only going to increase. The issue is, as I already mentioned earlier, the statistic of 96% of data generated on construction sites, on construction projects, is never looked at. Therefore, we probably need to get better at that. But there's also a lot of questions, I think, again, like the building safety bill, people are still getting to grips with what that means and who's going to own that and who's going to own the data and where does the data live and who's got to do what with the data, where does the risk in owning the data live. So there's still a lot of questions around that. Our industry is very risk averse, but legislation changes the way we do stuff. That's one of the levers. It tends to make us change our ways quite quickly. But there's still a lot of questions around that kind of stuff. People are worried. People don't want to be the guy owning the building safety data yet because they're not really sure what they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's going to increase. It's going to increase, but there's still some risks and some concerns that people have around ownership and where does it live forever. And take the concept of the digital twin and the ownership of the digital twin post handover, basically handing over a smart asset. Where does all the data live that sits behind that's been generated by the design team? It's kicked over to the client. What does the client do with it? Doesn't know what to do with it. So that's currently an ongoing challenge on a few of our projects. Is who owns the digital twin data? Where's it going to live? Who's going to look after it? So ongoing daily challenge.
Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add on that one?
Yeah, I think I kind of put this issue into terms twofold. One is external collaboration between different stakeholders across the project, but the fact is as well, this isn't just a construction issue. It's a business challenge across many different industries. Is actually internal collaboration and communication as well across departmental or different departments. If we take a construction company, a very simple example would be an RFI is created. It then turns into a variation on the project. It then needs to go to procurement, or the QS for approval. All of this currently happens, very siloed is a word we like to use when we're talking about digitization. But so it's I think in terms of adopting a system, it's important to make sure that you can streamline that as best you can internally to improve your operations as well. I think we're always going to have that challenge of external collaboration. I think there's solutions on the market that would definitely improve that. So until we get to a space where interoperability of open formats and stuff is going to be more at the forefront, the smaller challenges we can tackle now is just look at your own operations, look at the improvements you can make there, and then start to look wider than that across the project stakeholders.
Absolutely. Tapan, did you have anything that you wanted to add on that one?
In fact, for collaboration, I think we took that as a challenge and we created processes around collaboration because we did not want to report thrice, as in create a report for a contractor or a contractor creating for us and then we reporting it to the customer. So and definitely with collaboration becomes transparency at a certain level, definitely, and that brings a lot of confidence in the customer as well as the contractor. So that was our key takeaway from collaboration. And I think I would just want to share the experience that collaboration would work definitely and in a very positive way when it's done in the right sense for the processes.
I cannot believe this, but we've already come to the end of an hour. We've literally got 60 seconds left in the session today. So I wanted to say a huge thank you to our 3 speakers. You've all been so brilliant and so insightful and given us so much to go on. Apologies to any of our audience questions that we didn't get to. We've just had so much great discussion that we haven't quite got around to them all. But then also I'd love to say thank you to Procore for facilitating today and enabling it to happen. We've had a couple of people ask again, yes, you can share the link, you can watch it online. Just give us till 4 o'clock and then I'm sure we'll be fine via the same link that you've joined today. So yes, everything is there. And to catch up on any of our events, just go to Assemble Media events and all our events are there upcoming and on demand. So again, a huge thanks to our speakers and to our audience and especially to Procore for enabling today to happen. That's it from me. Thanks and goodbye.